Good morning, everybody. This is Maria Villar, and I'm a head of enterprise data strategy and transformation at SAP, and I am the track producer for this session. This is session 14-2, active metadata driving business change. And I think we all know that metadata has always been important, but making it active, making it real, especially in the cloud world, is becoming more and more important. We have two experts here from Ab Initio who are going to take us through a discussion. It will run for 50 minutes, as all the other sessions have, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. So it's my pleasure to be able to introduce Sheehy and also Kristian Desch.
So I'm Ed Sheehy. I'm a data person here. Let me come out of this. So I, in my career, variously have been a data modeler, a DBA, a data architect. I worked at Pricewaterhouse Consulting in the 90s in their banking data solutions practice, and I worked at JP Morgan Chase for a couple of for finance transformation initiative. I'm with Ab Initio Software right now. We're going to talk about our experiences. We're going to try and keep this from being an infomercial, and you in the audience here can grimace or give us a sign if we're starting to verge into infomercial territory. But we're really trying to share our experiences, and we were told to be deputized as if we were MIT professors here. So we're going to try and keep this not academic, but like real world experience and use cases. We encourage questions, so don't have to wait till the end. And Maria's going to monitor things that are happening online, and you in the classroom, you raise your hand, shout out, heckle. I'm from New York. I can take it. Kristian?
Sure. Hi, my name's Kristian Desch. I'm a strategic consultant with Ab Initio. Prior to joining, I spent 15 plus years at TransUnion running all of the credit risk, solution architecture, and software engineering functions. And then prior to that, I spent almost 14 years at Accenture doing a lot of high-tech financial services consulting, and really looking forward to spending time with everyone today talking through our active metadata point of view.
All right, so the first thing we're going to do is just try and level set with everybody on Ab Initio's experiences, and what we see is the evolution of metadata over the past 25 years. Okay, so in Ab Initio's case, what we first got involved with in our products and our solutions for customers was technical metadata solutions. This was primarily driven by business impact analysis for change in systems. There was also a customer of ours who was using a database for credit decisions that hadn't been refreshed in a couple of years. So they had good time credit scores in bad economic conditions, and they were still giving credit out to people. So the fact that that data was stale, they had no way of monitoring and controlling. So we got involved in physical data lineage, understanding, like symbology or Y2K type of problems, that this field is changing. What are the systems that need to be tested and changed also? In earlier days, as I mentioned with data governance, so some of these technical implications like stale data became part of initial governance kind of agenda, but it was really like IT governance. Really with the financial crisis in 2008, 2009, and particularly with the regulators in Basel, the Banking Committee on the Basel Committee on Banking Supervision, coming out with a set of principles, which they call BCBS 239, there was an understanding that garbage in, garbage out, right? The data that goes into risk reserving models by banks is only as good as the data inputs. So the Basel Committee came out with a series of standards. We mapped our capabilities to deal with our banking customers, and now we share that capability for data governance. The big change here, not that we hadn't seen it before, in fact, I'd like to give shout out to anybody from Bank of Boston from the 1990s, was data governance was seen as a business function, not as an IT perspective. And after the financial crisis, it was realized that its business people need to own data and accountability for this. And Holly, just to give you a shout out to your former boss, Allison Mahalik, we learned from working with really smart people that it's not just, as somebody once said, the business of management is measurement, but we learned from Allison that the business of measurement is driving change, driving accountability. So it's business people who own systems and business processes need to understand the implications of data quality, and they're the ones who need to drive change. So in systems that we've built, we now measure business data quality as well as technical data quality in a varying complexity and arbitrary complexity. And we get that measurement and we drive it back to the business owner of that system or business process. And he or she is then measured, this is at Wells Fargo, they're measured to drive change, okay? You own this ticket, drive responsible and accountable change. So data governance really also we found in this, with ab initio, needed business metadata. So we had to make people accountable for data quality, we had to make it transparent in business terms. The data is in business terms, like a net interest margin, which is a term in banking, right? So that had to be defined, applied to physical data, measured that way, and the business people needed to understand transparently how they were measured for being accountable, and they needed consistency in measurement. So we evolved technology to map business terms to physical data, to physical metadata, and then to have consistent, transparent business rules in business metadata terms, like truth tables, to say, here's what net interest margin is, here is what the measurement of it is, here, you know, so, and here's the location of the measurement, and so all the answers that you would need to drive business change. Allison was, you know, I really like her. She really believed that the business of driving culture change is taking away excuses from people. So any excuse that you can think of as to why this data quality measurement doesn't apply to you, she would take away. So it's transparent, it's consistent, you know where it happened, you know the business impact of it.
And really the ability to kind of bridge the business concepts that the people that are accountable and bridge and map that to what it means in the real world and the technical layer. That was the real power here in the way the excuse was removed, because we facilitated that bridge of the technical instantiation with the real business concepts and terms. Very powerful.
So the next point of our evolution, and now we're getting into more recent history, is the rise of data catalogs. Data catalogs are a way for a business self-service access to data. Okay, so what is data? Now, of course, these terms are variable across software vendors and stuff, so I'm going to go with like a definition here of saying a data catalog is a vehicle for providing business self-service access to data in business terms. You as a business user, again, taking away from excuses, you don't need to know where the best data set in the bank is. You can see associated metadata that tells you where that is. Frequently, we find in data lakes and cloud data fabric, a lot of technologists do like a select star type thing across hundreds of systems. And what they get from
I'm seeing nods.
Yeah. What they get is they're pulling this data in, and maybe it's a transaction processing system, but they also get from the transaction processing system the customer information, the customer risk rating, other surrounding reference data for which that system is a source of reference. It is reference data. It's not the source of record for that content. And so what we find in these data lakes and data and cloud data fabrics is you get N copies of the customer as a result of pulling in from all these different product systems. And which is the right one? Well, metadata will say, here, I just want to find data, like with selection criteria, that's from the source of record system. Okay, and maybe that source of record system isn't on your data lake, but we can federate that query access across the enterprise. So taking away the excuse of, I don't know the data topography of the firm, I don't know how to navigate physical data space, just remove all that. So a data catalog, in our definition, is really just a way of providing the business to get access to the data resources they need that's fit for purpose. They can see whatever they need to do about that, navigating from the business term. Who's using this data, how they're using it, all of those things start to be part of a really rich data catalog service. So key to this for us, and what we had to evolve at ab initio, was this capability for semantic discovery. So Kristian, why don't you explain semantic discovery?
So
Put you on
really,
the spot.
Yeah, the real concept here is, despite all this evolution and trying to empower users, self-service, humans are only so scalable. And so you also need the power of the machine to aid the humans. And that's really what semantic discovery is about. How do I understand, how does the machine assist the human to understand the meaning of the data? There might have been a manual effort to catalog and document, well, your PII, where is it, what's the sensitive data? We also built semantic discovery to assist our customers, bringing machine power to help discover where is your sensitive data, where is your PII, automatically categorize and connect the technical view of the sensitive data to the business terms, as well as understanding and discovering relationships between the data. The system might be so old, we dropped all the key constraints, and now I've got the same data, I think, in my data lake. Semantic discovery can connect the dots and say, there's actual key relationships between, you could join or connect these data sources, even though it says it's not possible in the ER diagram. That's another key power of semantic discovery, is understanding the meaning of the data, what is it, but also how does it relate to everything else, and propose and make recommendations that power a human to, yes, that makes sense, I accept that, let's go ahead and update our metadata system and our catalog, because I believe with high confidence this really is sensitive data and there is a meaningful relationship between the data here and there. Very powerful stuff that really helps scale as you're trying to get your arms around your data. We can make humans very powerful, but the machines need to help them too.
So the next step in our evolution is what we're seeing in again, more recent years, is this concept of data marketplace, data contracts, in which the registration in metadata systems of not just the sourcing of data, but the uses of data. And also in data marketplaces, we're starting to see what the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants calls data valuation methods. So a data valuation method has, you need to look at this with bifocals, okay? So in one sense, it's what's the cost of producing data. This is like the CFO's perspective on data. This system, we produce 10 million records, and it costs us $10 million. So each record costs $1. Something like that, some kind of cost allocation mechanism. So that's the CFO perspective. But the business value of data is determined by its value at consumption. So we've had customers, somebody in the audience was asking questions about real life use cases and stuff. So we had a customer that we showed them that the reference data that was going into their risk reserving system, again, it's a financial services company, was overstated in some areas and understated in other, because the reference data didn't have quality itself. And so we were able to show them how to save billions of dollars in their risk reserving practice.
The true materiality.
The true materiality and the use of the data was in its use here was in reserving to back up all the credit exposures of this institution. The use of a piece of data and the lift that it provides and the quality that it provides in a machine learning model. So understanding the business outcomes that come from data is part of this closed loop learning system that's part of new metadata systems. All of these 4 steps in the use of metadata are encouraging active metadata. The metadata itself, we talked about data being stale, metadata being stale can have like a second order effect on the quality of the data that you have in your systems. Having data actively being processed, being pulled in, having metadata quality controls is also part of what we see as necessary for an active metadata system. Kristian, any points? Okay. And then the next stage of evolution that Ab Initio is working on right now with our customers is applying metadata to control business processes, IT processes, to give the business transparency into what the system does, what its logic is, how to configure a system for reuse. This is at the API level. A lot of people are trying to get to a world of microservices and APIs that I can rack and stack together in terms of new products and services. And my friend Kathy has worked at JP Morgan. I think she's in the virtual space here. I don't want to mention her by name. But she said that a real problem that we have is that you set forth teams of people, they don't necessarily use the same gauge of data. So what the unit of measurement may change, like we said, net interest margin, that may change. So in order to get better outcomes, you actually have to have consistency in the semantics and the unit of measurement to actually rack and stack these things. You can't bring one gauge of railroad track to another when you're driving the Great Union Pacific Spike and hope that they're going to work. You actually have to govern this all across the board. So active metadata to provide transparency into the way you're combining APIs, the way you're combining business processes, to enable reuse. We've seen this earlier with providing business data quality controls and logic being specified in business terms. But now we're actually configuring data pipelines with metadata. We're providing business self-service with low-code, no-code software. Again, as Kristian mentioned before, automation with metadata can take away excuses. In the digital economy, what we need is agility. As Darwin said, the species that survives is not necessarily the fastest or the strongest. It's the one that's most able to adapt to change. So what we're trying to do is to enable business agility for people to respond with new business models to new market conditions. And that doesn't, and the old model of writing a spec to hand off to IT, and these days, how do you find IT talent when Google and Apple are sucking them up at higher rates? Means that we need to enable greater business self-service and control of automation itself. And the role of metadata is to give business transparency and control into business processes, data pipelines, business access of data, and again, register all this actively back into data marketplaces. Let this a cycle of using metadata to drive change and to drive further investments into the quality of your data.
The way I think about it is we're finally at a point where there's even more return on all your kind of data governance and data quality initiatives. It's now active. Literally the same environment you're using to understand your business terms, how do they relate to my technical terms and where the data is. That same environment, that same system is now live and active. I found some trusted data that solves a problem I'm trying to do. The same environment, I can go get access to it. Automatically generate here are the data sets I need. Please put them in my data lake. Please put them in Snowflake tables. That's all self-service generated work versus I've used my data catalog and my data dictionaries and systems. Here's the data I want. Hey, data engineer, please go get that for me. You don't need to do that anymore. With the right metadata that powers this, it feeds automation that powers self-service. So we've broken a kind of telephone effect issue, which is there's all this great reference. Now that reference powers automation so you can get your data in a much faster way. And we're seeing remarkable reduction in time to value. Find your data, consume your data in a much more productive way because metadata drives the automation that feeds the self-service. Really powerful stuff.
And this, again, in most mature organizations is leading to A/B testing. So I'm using data to create a new business process in a small subset of my market base, people in the southern suburbs of Columbus, Ohio. Shout out to my Ohio fans. And use that as a test market. And if it works in Columbus against the control group in which you didn't do the treatment, then you expand that. And again, all of this testing of process, testing of data quality improvement, understanding that one record which is 80% null actually drives better results would lead your CDO to make the case for improving even greater results by investing in that data to fill in the nulls. So active metadata is increasingly, we think, important and needs to be governed and understood strategically as a business asset. We know from talking to our customer base, which have different sophistication at the top of the house and in their line of business leadership, that increasingly a business strategy is only as good as the data assets underneath it to execute. And more people are starting to learn that. And we're saying that the metadata is your necessary tool as a business leader to control your data and your destinies. So again, the next part of this session, the rest of this, that first slide was the real grounding that we want to say for everything else. The next part of this is back to Alison Mahalick's principles of driving change by taking away excuses from people. What we're finding is, and this is research out of Forbes, I know I'm supposed to give you attribution, but Forbes themselves were repeating other research on this, and if people want for the links, I'll send it to you afterwards, that companies that compete on customer experience, that try and understand the journeys that customer are on, what's the next best action to do for each customer, that those companies are outperforming laggards. Active metadata, as we were saying before, creates business agility. And we believe that active metadata can take away excuses to drive change. So customers are changing their expectations. I know my children, who are in their 30s, they're used to Amazon shopping, more powerful digital experiences. Customers that they're dealing with vendors that understand past behavior, know what I want before I even ask for it. So we have a customer in Australia. Commonwealth Bank of Australia, I'll give them a shout out. When you go to apply for a mortgage, they don't just treat this as a product anymore. They understand that the person buying a home is making one of the most important decisions in their life. When they approve you for a certain amount of credit, they'll also recommend to you neighborhoods in, let's say, Sydney, Australia, that you can where you can get reasonable homes for your income level with the amount of money that they'll lend you. And they'll know things like you have children or not, and how many children you have, because will have enriched as much to try and understand as much about you as possible from information brokers or their own past experience with you. And they will say for what you can afford, for what would be the best school district for you and your family, you really can get a 2-bedroom house, but we know you have 3 kids, so here's a carpenter that we would recommend that can help you build out another room in your house. And that's understanding customers and driving better customer experience, wowing customers, creating the next best action for customers. And so this is the expectation that leading data-driven companies, companies that are trying to understand customer experience and drive better outcomes are doing. So the council that McKinsey and Bain, Boston Consulting Group and others will tell you is don't be limited in your current business model. Your customers aren't limited in their lives. You have to think broader about where your customers are. And you need to know more about your customers, and you need better data about your customers. So being on a journey with each customer is, again, using data to derive customer state. These are inference engines, and again, your inferences are testable over large aggregates. Organize the state transition of where you're getting from shopping for a mortgage to actually committing to a mortgage to shopping for a house in a neighborhood, adapting and learning from customer behavior, what happens to like customers with machine learning techniques, clustering analysis, et cetera, to understand each individual customer with as much information as we can, even from deriving from aggregates. And deriving these business events, responding to a customer consistently across all channels and states and the customer experience. So I just flew British Airways a couple of weeks ago. Flight was delayed an hour and a half, and they started selling me their credit card. That was not really the right thing to do. When you are grumpy, is not the time to hit you with a sales pitch. So a lot of companies need to understand the state of their customer and the channel and the mechanism and the method for communicating with them more effectively.
And I'd add, this isn't a documentation or a one-time analysis type activity. This is literally helping companies in real time keep a state machine about every customer, what's going on with them, and reacting and interacting with them, making the next best offer or action based on a change in their real-time state. That's the kind of stuff we're able to power, and it's really differentiating, and the feedback we get on what that enabled is overwhelming. Really, really cool stuff.
And so here's a shout out to my friend Niccolo Machiavelli, who, and I never tire of reciting this quote, and again, feel free to throw tomatoes at me at any time, but he said 500 years ago, the hardest thing to do is to attempt to change the existing order of things. Those who would benefit from the change tend to hang back In business, you have different people like, oh, let those schmucks do it, and I'll hang back, and if they're successful, then I'll repeat it. But a lot of people hang back to see that you have success, and then they will adapt and they'll imitate the success. But they hang back. But those who are threatened by change, because you're introducing new change, like accountability for data, accountability for customer experience, of changing from being a product P&L company to a customer P&L company. Those who are threatened by that change, their compensation models change, they're out of their comfort zone, those people will actively or passively resist you every step of the way. There's a great term of the art from Miley Carney, who's the head of retail banking at ANZ Bank. She talks about the frozen middle. So the board of directors and the operating committee at a bank will get this, and they'll articulate this. They understand the value of data and understanding data for customer experiences and how to drive change. And the frozen middle will yes them to death and do nothing, right? And so this is the problem. So the innovator has enemies, as Machiavelli points this out 500 years ago. But there were enemies to the Renaissance, believe it or not, okay? So, and then the other part, which is Peter Drucker, who I have a shrine in my home with candles and incense burning. He says, culture, actually he's attributed this quote. Nobody can actually find him saying this, but I'll attribute him the quote too, because it comes out in his writings as well. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. So you can come out with a brilliant business strategy, popped in, ex-McKinsey partner, now head of a managing director of something or other, and you have this brilliant strategy, but unless you understand the culture of the firm that you're in, it may not be operable at all. You have to deal with issues like the frozen middle, how to take away excuses for them, how to move them along. And the best, and then I also like, and Vlad, who's my business partner here, also believes this, that the future is what we create. It's not for other people, it's for us. It's for you in the room, and you and you're not going to react to the future. You're going to help create that future. Step up to change, okay? So back to Allison's principles, and I don't know if Allison's listening, but I'm tirelessly impressed by her. A common impediment is to remove the impediments to digital transformation, okay? What we can absolutely do is, and we kind of mentioned before, is use metadata, active metadata, contextually, because if the metadata isn't believable, then the data isn't believable, right? So where's the best data? What does this data mean? How to navigate physical data? Take away those excuses. Remove the barriers to data. Use metadata to find the source of record for each system. When you're populating a data lake or a cloud data fabric or data mesh, et cetera, as you're doing that, understand from a source of record, from a system that you're pulling data, what data is that the source of record for versus a source of reference? You can filter out the source of reference data, right? Unless you're interested also in what was the credit score of the customer at the time of loan origination or at that point in time. And that has value too. But when you want to know the current status, you want that to join up to things you're going to do in the presence. Use metadata to control data sourcing. Register in metadata the source of record. And again, so people can self-service access data, provide really rich metadata experiences for them to find the best data that's fit for purpose. And as we're saying, using metadata for consistency and transparency and data quality controls.
And I'd just say some more examples are to make the culture change happen, removing these barriers. And what are the typical things you hear? I'm still waiting for the data. I don't know. I'm not sure I trust it. Those are the, through active metadata, those are the types of barriers that go away. You can select from high quality data that you can see the controls, you can see the profile of the data and why it's trusted, and then you don't have to wait for that handoff. Well, I guess some data engineering team needs to write a pipeline for me so I can actually use this for my analysis or my operational system. The automation, this can all be automated, streamlining this process to help companies with their culture change and their initiative, and streamlining access to high quality data through active metadata is how we see that becoming successful.
Yeah. So another point here is, people are, have this magical idea that if I rub machine learning against my data, money will come out. But the reality is much more complicated than that, right? So I was at Wells Fargo. and I was talking to a guy, believe it or not, despite my youthful appearance, I'm as old as the hills. So I ran into a guy who I knew from 20 years early in my career at Capital One, and he is, before they even called him this, a data scientist, right? And so I go, Rick, how's it going? And he goes, it took me 5 years to learn the data topography at Wells before I started to add value. So, the companies are like paying real money for these data science teams, and they're not going to drive better outcomes if they can't find the best data.
Find it and believe it and trust it through facts and profiles.
Yeah, and again, for business outcomes, data has to be visible in business terms, and and here shout out to Malcolm X, by any means necessary, right? Harvest metadata, data dictionaries, validate the contents of data dictionaries. Data dictionaries might have been written in 1975. They may not actually currently describe the contents that they have, but harvest that. Use semantic discovery, as we mentioned before, and semantic discovery uses a variety of techniques, including machine learning, to take all the clues that we have about data. The physical naming convention is that, C_ACCT, that could be the card account number, okay? But if it also has, when we profile the data, if it also has the LUM checksum in it, then it's got a double scoring. It's probably a credit card number. And that also is something that needs PII control. So we use many different techniques to identify the business meaning of physical data. And then this again is a real culture change to get business people to be able to access data and see it in flat data space. Because let's be honest, I myself might love a good old JSON document. I love XML and EDI. I eat this stuff for breakfast. I'm sorry, I'm thinking about breakfast because of Peter Drucker. And so that's fine. But the ordinary business person needs to see things in flat cognitive space. So we have to normalize data sets. We have to standardize its reference data. We need to make it easy for them to then use business self-service tools to combine and get the outcomes they have. And as Kristian mentioned before, with automation and use of metadata, let's give you the data landscape. What are the associated data sets that are associated with your customer transaction record, and pull it all together so you can easily navigate and get access to.
And I'd also add making access to the, safely in a secure way to the systems of record versus a potentially stale system of reference or data store of reference. That is also unlocked now where through this active metadata approach, the party or person needing data doesn't need to worry about where it really is. Is it on a mainframe? Is it in a Teradata? Is it in Snowflake? Is it in S3 or blob storage somewhere? An active metadata approach abstracts that. So I just focus on the business outcome and the business terms and the meaning I'm going for, and I don't have to sweat. Well, if it's on the mainframe, that's a whole other ball of wax, whole other team to deal with to get the data, and I'm going to wait a long time. That's also key to active metadata, is that abstraction and virtualization and federation to all of the data sources in your organization. That's a key thing to really get this moving.
So here's a little infomercial here, the risk of having tomatoes in it. So we have this capability for finding data via metadata, via well-code search, by technical or business criteria. And we believe that using metadata this way, the metadata being current, accurate, of high quality, can guide business usage and access to data. As we mentioned, discovering related data sets, federating access to data, automating to remove barriers to data. You might say, Ed and Kristian, they're really talking a great line of crap. We will back this up. Ab initio will do proofs of concepts to show the technical capability. We don't charge for these proof of concepts, and we'll show the business value we can create, the business agility we can create. And the other part of this to driving digital information is, as we said before, so this is the first part of this is how to get access to the data, the right data. Now, how do I manage customer journeys? What's the next best action for customer? Remove barriers to the access of data. So once you've found the right data, We have products here as well to let you do business self-service, creation of data products, information products, inputs, data engineering, feature engineering as they call it, machine learning, or report generation as we called it old school, understanding what business results are, pulling this together with business self-service. For data science, one of the things Kristian and I have been working on right now is with a life insurance company that because of certain accounting standards, they can't allow their actuaries to willy-nilly create calculations. And so there's a notion in life insurance called embedded value. And embedded value is essentially the net present value of future revenues from the customer, future costs associated with the customer. And believe it or not, in any life insurance company of any size and scale, the actuaries will do this 6 ways from Friday. And so there's no consistency in then the reserving that goes in or the calculation of how they're modeling and steering the business to drive better returns on capital. And so consistency of calculation is also something we can do. So getting access to data, having standard calculations being accessible to people, and also accelerating model deployment. So again, a Wells Fargo story, but I won't mention the name at this point, was a woman who was talking about how anytime they have a successful machine learning model that they like and want to deploy, it then costs the bank 9 months and $1 million to deploy it in production. So if you build the model and the access to data and the logic in the model and the support for the model in metadata, configured terms, and business terms, then we can redeploy it to production. And ab initio technology, we have a lot of optimizations built into our automation as well. So these systems can then be more quickly brought to market. And the other thing that we have, and it's unlimited, is this thing called the customer data platform. So again, in the IT world, things get labeled different things. What we mean by a customer data platform is that system that gives you the most current information about a customer at any point of time in any channel or any experience, product experience that the customer is having. It has the aggregates, it has the derived business events associated with the customer, getting greater simplicity, getting to one component service and things like this. And there's a fear, particularly with legacy core systems, that this is like heart and lung surgery to do this. It constitutes grave business risk. But we also have solutions. We're working with a number of banks right now in how to do the bridging strategy. So you can move, because we run on the mainframe and we can read mainframe data as well as JSON in any modern system, Snowflake, et cetera. We provide a bridge from the legacy to the modern so you can move a portion of a product portfolio, a portion of a customer portfolio at a time, do parallel testing, scale it, iterate it. So iterative development, iterative migration is really necessary for those intractable core systems, legacy data messes, and we have solutions to help in that.
Okay, great. So the next session here in the conference starts at 10 o'clock. So we want to give everybody a little bit of time to get to where they need to be. The one question that's in the chat is just where can they get a copy of the slides? The conference WOVA won't post necessarily those, but if they want to get it from you or from ab initio, if there's a way to do that.
Yeah, we're happy to share those.
Okay. All right, great. So Ed, Kristian, thank you very much. It's been great. Learned a lot.